Thank you very much. Hello everyone. Yeah, so not so much how to fix it like my instruction guide, but more actually how I think the world is changing, and I guess that coming into a discussion, a room that's about the local government and some of the, just hearing that from Rachel, so like deep inspiration of things that are already happening in the world. And I suppose where I come from, I run an organisation called the New Citizenship Project. We're a small consultancy business. We work with organisations of all shapes and sizes across all sectors, really. And the work we do is about articulating the story that there is a shift going on in the idea of the individual in society, a shift from consumer to citizen, a shift that is really, really hopeful. And I suppose what I'm trying to bring in today and what I'm offering in this little lightning talk is two things really. Firstly, a tool, in a way, a bit of language and a way of thinking about this moment in time, and some inspiration, some sort of to try and draw some stuff in from the wider world, like look out beyond the local government world and say, actually there's something deeply exciting going on that we are all part of, and to take some sort of sustenance from that into today maybe and beyond. So. We call it, the theory that we work with, we talk about an idea we call the citizen shift, which is essentially to say that we think that what's going on in the world right now, this moment of confusion and difficulty and toughness is actually a symptom of something very deep and underlying, but also potentially very hopeful. So we talk about a shift from subject to consumer to citizen as the idea of the individual in society, and it's a sort of broadly historical narrative there, like quite loosely, and I don't have time to go into the depths. I'd love if anyone gets excited about this and kind of interested in it. I'm very happy to kind of argue and get the builds from you later today. But broadly, what we're saying is that towards the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th, the dominant idea of the individual is something like the subject, like keep your head down, do as you're told. Vote tribally, be part of something, but accept your station. And then coming out of the two World Wars and through the second half of the 20th century, that idea is more or less deliberately actually replaced by something like the consumer. So subject logic is keep your head down, do as you're told, get what you're given. Consumer logic is get the best deal for yourself. Choose the option that suits you from those that are offered. And if everyone does that, the best society will result. It's a kind of moral logic. It's not, as it emerges, it's not an evil plot. But what we think is going on right now is just as the subject logic collapsed before, the consumer logic is collapsing right now. And what's emerging and bubbling, and the examples that we've heard from Rachel and Tim and so forth, are all part of is this emergence of something like the citizen. So subject, keep your head down as you're told. Consumer, choose the best deal for yourself. Citizen, something like get involved. Shape the context of your own life and be a meaningful participant. And if everyone does that, then the best society results. Now, the reason why... just to give you a bit of data that underpins some of this. So we've done a load of social site research in various ways. This is some data that I think would be particularly interesting to this group. We asked 3,000 people 2 questions working with YouGov. Firstly, to what extent do you think it's important to participate actively in society? Secondly, to what extent do you think it's important to be involved in local community? The clever bit is, so we split the sample into 3. So the blue column in the middle, we're only asked those 2 questions. The yellow column on the right, before they were asked those 2 questions, we asked them, to what extent do you agree that everyone's born equal? The pink column on the left, we asked them, before they were asked those 2 questions, we asked them, to what extent do you think it's important to find brands that fit your personality? Now this data is controlling for levels of agreement with those statements. It's purely by being exposed to that question first. So just if you read and ticked a box to what extent do you think it's important to find brands that fit your personality, you are then less likely to agree with the participation questions. Just reading a survey. Let that sink in for a moment. Just that idea. We've done similar ones with the word consumer in the framing of a question. So the language and the normative frames and ideas that we surround ourselves with are a deep part of structuring how we respond to situations. And I guess my plea to you, and those of you who are working in local authorities, think about where this language and these normative frames and these assumptions are inside your organisations, because if they're inside your organisations, they will project out, and that will dictate how people respond to you as well. So it's quite a deep, at one level it's a very superficial language thing, but actually it's a very deep kind of mindset shift. And so the tool that I wanted to offer, just very simple, and you can find all this stuff. We've got a report called the Citizen Shift, and I'll tweet some links and stuff for you if you want to dig into it a bit more. But this is the sort of top line. We talk just a way of kind of cueing some thoughts in your organisation. So subject, consumer, citizen. So subjects are dependent. They have stuff done to them. They obey. They obey and receive. And the right role for organisations and leaders is to command. With consumers are independent. They have stuff done for them. Their role is to demand and choose. And the role for organisations and leaders is to serve. And that can feel like a really positive thing relative to subject, some of what was sort of hinted at and what Rachel was talking about. But actually the real shift, and this is where Rachel's example really goes, is to citizen. Like people who are interdependent, who do stuff with you, who participate and create, and with whom the right role for organisations and leaders is actually to facilitate, not just to serve. And so that's where I think this work is emerging and this world's going. So as I said, the other thing I wanted to do was just offer a bit of inspiration, kind of drawn in from outside this world. So I've got 3 examples for you very quickly. The first one of my favourites, a Dutch news brand originally called The Correspondent. Very quick founding story. The editor-in-chief, Rob Weinberg, became the youngest editor-in-chief of the Dutch National Daily off pretty much straight out of university. His idea was about the news has become kind of entertainment for consumers rather than equipment for citizens, and we need to kind of claim that back. Like, how do we make the news about helping people understand the rules rather than helping people spot the exceptions that are going on? He got fired. And then he went on a Dutch talk show and he said, I believe there's a market for this, and if I get 10,000 subscriptions up front, I'll start it. I'll start the new business. He got 30,000 in 8 days. Later that year, 2013 this was, he started The Correspondent. It's now, in Holland, as a proportion of population, their membership, entirely subscriber funded, their membership makes them proportionally bigger than the New York Times as a proportion of the US population. They fundamentally are a participatory organisation. They have this philosophy. They say we don't call them journalists, we call them conversation leaders, and we don't call them readers, we call them expert contributors. All of their work, the education correspondent is a part-time Dutch teacher leading an inquiry into how the Dutch education system works. You could go on and on. If anyone saw the moment of Davos this year where Rutger Bregman, this Dutch historian, blew the lid off the discussion about taxes at Davos, Rutger is the correspondent. So this organisation is spawning these kinds of people as well. They've just launched, well, they're about to launch an English language edition. You can be a founding member of that. They're crowdfunding. They've hit a target of $2.5 million, and they're still going in that crowdfunding. So check it out, get involved. It's a really interesting organisation, fundamentally reshaping how news works. Second example, this is an annual general meeting. If you can see the image, this is the Brewdog annual general meeting. Now, Brewdog, so this is bringing beer into this, which is always a good thing to do. Probably should have done it in Pachakachar last night, as I've now learned this is how you say it. So Brewdog, really fascinating organisation, fundamentally different in that it's very purpose-driven. So they say everything that they do, they say we're on a mission to make everyone as passionate about craft beer as we are. And if you dig into it, what you find is that they actually see themselves as doing that in order to disrupt industrial monopolies that are kind of closing industries down. The guys off the back of that have done some fascinating things. They effectively invented equity crowdfunding. So before any of the platforms existed, they sold ownership of the organisation to the people who buy their product. But it goes way beyond that. So the ownership is there, but also the ways of working. So they're not just about selling as much of their own beer as they can. They're about involving people in that work. So they open source all their recipes, and they sell brewing kits. They invest 20% of their profits in other independent craft breweries, do all this stuff. But the most interesting thing is the way that community is then holding them to account in every aspect of their business. So they were one of the first. They built pioneering eco breweries. They were one of the first employers to be living wage, and they attribute those things to the pressure put on them by the ownership model and by the involvement and active involvement of the equity funds. And then they do a big AGM, which they call Annual General Mayhem, and it is effectively a piss up in a brewery, but they also do shareholder resolutions. They also do resolutions. And there's a load of little lessons that I think the way we work could learn from. And my final one, coming a bit more kind of a bit different, is the Bank of England. This is the Bank Underground blog. You'll note that the title of the particular piece that I've picked out, Less is More. What does mindfulness mean for economics? Not the average thing you'd expect to be published by the Bank of England. It's really interesting. So even sort of really like encrusted institutions shaping themselves very differently in this moment in time. So Bank Underground is a staff blog that is available for anyone who works at the bank to write, to share their thoughts on what's going on, to open up discussions, actively encouraged to be in conflict with and building on bank policy. And they've got something like a million followers across the country now, like regular readers of this. It's very interesting how they're doing that. Beyond that, so Tim talked about citizens' assemblies. That Andy Haldane, the chief economist, has recently committed to setting up a network of regional assemblies to inform bank policy. On citizens' assemblies, effectively ongoing to inform bank policy on the basis that they will make, not just on the basis of sort of legitimacy and kind of informing and communications, but on the basis that will enable them to make better decisions. So even in this, like these central institutions, there's something very interesting and shifting going on. So I suppose that for me is the hope I kind of want to bring into the room for sort of outside this conversation and go, this is part of something super exciting. And although we are living in a time when things appear to be kind of cracking around us, that is creating space that I think is becoming filled. And in a really exciting way. If you want to know more, so our New Citizenship Project, we work with organisations to do this stuff. We're hopefully going to be working with the Kirklees guys relatively soon, so we'll be around. Check out our website and sign up to the mailing list. We send out like regular inspiration from these kind of stories, and come grab me if you want to talk more. Thank you very much.